All right, folks, welcome back to the channel. You found us here at KGB Customs, home of what we believe is some of the best custom gun content on the web. We like to share these custom guns in hopes of sharing some knowledge and to catalog some of the great pieces that come through our shop. We appreciate you all tuning in. For new viewers, I would ask you to, join with us here, subscribe to the channel. There's a link in the description to get on our email list if this is the kind of stuff you're interested in. I appreciate all the returning viewers and everyone who participates down in the comments. Well, mostly everybody. It's been pretty good, though, so far. Today, we're going to share this example of a reworked masterpiece by Jim Hoag. This gun came into me in an all blued finish and not a high grade finish. It was likely a pistol built by Jim for a police department customer or a detective or somebody who was carrying it on duty and thus didn't want a flashy piece in their duty holster. The gun had some finish wear, but otherwise mechanically was very well kept. The gun is still pretty tight. The gun still shoots very well, and the gun had good bones. So I moved the gun on to a client who then begged me to refinish it in a classic two-tone fashion, the way Jim built so many of his guns. So this is the result. Gun just recently came back from hard chrome, and I got it together this week. And I blued the slide in the last batch of bluing I did. This gun now looks very much like a Mastergrade build from Jim. The only thing that kind of sets it apart from that is it doesn't have Jim's oval ring hammer. It has a bob spur instead. Jim would often reuse the hammer, the spurred hammer in his builds. You saw it in the long slide we did a video on not too long ago, and it was a matter of taste, I think, between him and his client, whether they wanted the added expense of the checkered oval ring hammer or the bob spur hammer. I kind of like the look of the spur hammer with the Hoag beaver tail myself, as it kind of gives you that same profile of the GI setup, the original setup that these guns would have had. The gun is, like I said, fully refreshed. I went through and cleaned up any dings, dents, or scuffs in it. The roll marks are beautifully restored by Bertram Edmondson, my go-to engraver for roll mark work, and a guy I consider a good friend. Bert's a master engraver, does all styles of engraving. He sort of focuses on the American Western scroll, Western style engraving, but I've seen him do all sorts of raised gold inlays and animals and some Bellino work and all that. And he's very capable. So roll marks are really a walk in the park for a guy like that, but he does a beautiful job, and they just have a whole new life to them that they wouldn't have even had originally. For one, they're pretty even depth all the way across. The roll marks rarely were, because if the surface of the slide was not dead flat or fixtured perfectly, the roll mark would favor one side or the other, or one end or the other of the slide if it wasn't perfectly flat this way or perfectly flat this way. So hand engraving them allows him to make them look right, and roll marks are one of those things. If they look right, they are right. Part of the restoration process was re-engraving those. Of course, we polished the slide in the same manner. Hoag, generally on his Mastergrade guns, the slides would be finished to what I call a factory finish level, which in the, I would say, early half of the 80s and 70s, when Hoag was really getting going, that was a pretty high polish. Not really a mere polish, but a pretty high polish. I don't take slide flats to a buffing wheel. I don't care for that. So these are hand polished with paper, and I finish with wet sanding. And that, I believe this slide was taken up to 1,000 and then backed off to 800. That's just kind of a thing I do sometimes on higher finished guns. I'll take it up one grit higher than I intend to finish it and then take it back. And that allows me to see if I've missed any of the step up sanding marks like 400 and 600 a little better than if I just got to 800 and stopped. It might all be in my head. Nonetheless, that's what I do. Then, of course, the rounds on the gun are matte. The whole frame is matte hard chrome. The AD Swenson thumb safety ambidextrous model there is left in the white natural stainless. Swenson only ever made them in stainless to my knowledge. And it was common on two-tone guns in the day for those to not go out to hard chrome. I don't know if they were worried about the durability of the tongue and groove, if that built up thickness with hard chrome, if the parts would not fit together properly, or if they would fit too tight. You could run into all kinds of problems hard chroming that part. So often they were left in natural stainless, and that's what we did here. But on this build originally, that safety had been blacked out. Jim or the customer had that painted a satin black. Again, kind of a low profile gun for the original user. The gun, of course, originally had the squared and checkered trigger guard, which is masterfully done. No one did it better than Jim Hoag, in my opinion. To this day, no one's figured out how to make a squared trigger guard look as good as Jim did. I'm trying, but I don't think I'm there yet. But I'll keep trying. Of course, we have Jim's extended slide stop. Jim's original idea for that was literally a bar that he serrated, soldered into a slot on a Colt slide stop. This is one he had manufactured. These were cast for him, much like the later grip safeties were cast for him. And were a high quality part that allowed a extended slide release slide stop there. That came pretty much clear back to the Swenson thumb safety paddle. Of course, we've got Jim's perfectly melted low mount Bomar. I've compared enough of Jim's guns now to the BMCS print, the print that tells you how to install BMCS. And it's not just the way they look. Jim actually did mount these sights lower in the slide. And so I've, in my notes somewhere, recorded those measurements. If I'm ever tasked with mounting one like Jim did, I've got some numbers on how to do that. The top of the slide is, of course, finely serrated. Jim would serrate them end to end and then stake and solder in a front sight. Now, this one has a Patridge style sight. This gun has a welded up and refit Colt barrel in it. Probably the original barrel to this gun. This gun was made in the late 60s. Barrel is fully welded up. The back of the hood extension, the feet, etc. There is a barrel positioner in there. We'll add a picture of it here in the video. Barrel positioner welded in. You can just faintly see a slight discoloration in the bluing, that just from the heat distortion of welding that in. And Jim was a big fan of barrel positioners, used them on a lot of guns. He didn't use them on every gun. Some guns, of course, the slides would vary, and you could get away with putting a bar stow in them and getting all the numbers where he wanted them without a barrel positioner. Barrel positioners are largely out of fashion today, partly because it's an added step, right? It's not an easy thing to do, and it's not wholly necessary with the way custom aftermarket barrels are made today. But with these guys reusing Colt barrels, it was necessary to get the most out of them accuracy wise and get them to return to the same position each time the gun cycled. Of course, the back of the slide is hand checkered, very fine cut there. I believe those are about 40 lines per inch. Again, we've got the Swenson ambi safety. This is a cast Hoag beavertail grip safety, classic Hoag checkering on the Colt arched mainspring housing. They had serrations, and then the outsides were not serrated all the way out to the edges on the left and right side. And he would just checker that original serrated field in the middle and then relieve with a file any overruns. And you can feel, if you run your finger across this, that the checkering kind of stands up proud of the surface on either side. I've replicated this myself, and it's a huge pain, but I know why he did it, and it wasn't just for looks. When you carry a gun with an arched mainspring housing that's checkered clear to the edges, you've got a protrusion on the back of your gun with sharp diamonds all the way out to the edges that are like little knives if you've pointed them up all the way. And this alleviates that, makes it a much more comfortable gun to carry if you're going to carry a gun with an arched mainspring housing that's checkered. Most gunsmiths just left the arched mainspring housing serrated, even if the front was checkered. You see that a lot on guns from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And then, of course, arched mainspring housings largely fell out of fashion, I would say in the late 80s, early 90s. Jim always liked them. A lot of his builds had them. The gun has had in it a short Colt factory steel trigger that Jim had added a over travel stop to make this look more like a Mastergrade gun. We did fit a medium greeter aluminum trigger to it, and also just to have a longer trigger than the other one. The front strap is beautiful, again, hand cut, sharp checkering, bordered all the way around. Really what Jim did best. We've got a match bushing fit to the muzzle there, probably a Clark or a King's unit. Jim got his start with Kings and did use their parts fairly regularly. If it wasn't a Swenson AMV safety, he would often use a King's single-sided safety in his builds. The gun originally had just fully checkered Harrods walnut grips. I put a set on here with the Colt medallion because, well, that's how I think of a Mastergrade, is Colt factory grips fit to the safeties and levers and etc. But overall, just wanted to share with you guys this Hoag here that got a new life. I think it came out really nice, and like I said, we'll kind of fill the video up with some still shots so you guys can look it over real good. I know our customer is really eager to get this. He's waited a good long time for it, as we're pretty busy here. But I appreciate you guys tuning in, and feel free to share this video with anyone you know that's into these classic custom guns. Thanks.